Lily is extremely motivated,
smart,
loving,
and beautiful inside and out. My name is Angela Salerno-Giroux, Salerno being my maiden name. So I am Christine Salerno's sister, Lily's aunt, and her godmother.
I am the mother of Christine Salerno, who is Lily's mother.
I'm her speech and language pathologist. And as a speech and language pathologist, I'm focusing more on the language. So when you're SLP, the speech is more like the motor aspect. Lily is she's absolutely adorable. She's a perfectionist, and I would say she's very loving. She just wants to make everyone happy. And since Lily is nonverbal, she's using a assistive technology device, and it's referred to as a Toby. So essentially, it's a Windows-based computer that has cameras and special software that allows the screen to pick up where she's looking. And if she looks long enough at a space, it says a word. So all of her words on her device, it's core word based. So it's not pre-programmed phrases. It's each space is an individual word, which means that Lily gets to develop language like any other child would.
Your word so far. Abfuga. We can make it if we do A. Abfuga. Yeah. Okay, A, B, F, G, A, Abfuga. This is what Lily would rather be doing, saying Abfuga. More to say.
More to say.
I think.
I think it's silly. Crazy.
That's a silly word. Abfuga. What do you think about it? What do you think about that word?
Unbelievable.
Oh, it is? It's an unbelievable
Think. Thought. Funny.
You think funny. I love it. Telling me I think you think funny, Elaine.
And it's autonomous. It's her thoughts. So she's not selecting what we have chosen for her. So I do activities with Lily about 3 days a week, teaching her different language concepts and how she can use her board and develop motor plans to be more fluent on her communication board and express her thoughts and ideas. That's really what it is so that she can get her words out and her thoughts out. I'm also her assistive technology provider, which means that I'm training all of her team members in how to use that technology that she's using to communicate. So it's teaching them how to respond to Lily, how to prompt and cue her and provide support, and how to integrate it into all of her activities of daily living. So that's pretty much my focus. So I work at Montefiore Rett Clinic, and it meets only on Fridays, but I get to meet a lot of families that way. So I also have my own practice as a speech and language pathologist and assistive technology provider. And when I have openings, I usually take on people that have mandates in the tri-state area that have Rett syndrome. So it's my passion, and that's really the focus of my practice. Someone with Rett syndrome, especially when they're learning a communication device, needs a lot of support and someone right next to them. And as a therapist, you always want to be aware that you're not giving too much support and you're not doing too much for the individual. And we decided to teach Lily how to tell time about 3 years ago. And I noticed that Lily was kind of getting frustrated by me hovering over her shoulder and talking. And I decided to take like a step away and just give her the problem, kind of like explain what I was asking of her. And I took a step back and I went out of the room just to watch her. And she was able to complete it all on her own. And she was so proud of herself. Like she just needed the time to be independent and complete this on her own. And I never would have taken a step back. And I took that and I applied that to all of my other students. So she taught me that sometimes, you know, they need independence and they can do it and they can learn from it. Another funny story of Lily was,
My first thought, of course, was that it was congenital, that she was born with it. But that is not the case.
I actually specifically remember very conversation with my sister where she said, hey, do you remember when your daughter was growing up if she knew words and then just lost them? And when she said that, an alarm kind of went off because I knew that was very typical with autism. Of course, I hoped it wasn't the case, but they did think originally the first diagnosis was autism. And then they continued testing her, and I just remember Christine saying to me, please don't let it be Rett syndrome. And that was probably the very first time that I had heard of it. She filled me in a little bit about what it was, but then, of course, I went online and did research on my own. But before that, I'd never heard of Rett syndrome.
Before Lily, I knew about Rett syndrome before Lily's diagnosis, but I didn't know what Rett syndrome was.
Before the word Rett syndrome started getting thrown around with Lily, I had never heard of it before. When she was little, she was progressing at a typical pace.
Teacher. Very good. Baby, baby. Say mama. Okay. Thank you. Say bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
And she got this syndrome, this terrible, ugly disease. And I never knew it was so prevalent. And when I first heard, of course, I was crushed because she was such a beautiful, special little baby. And I didn't cry. I wouldn't cry because I wouldn't upset Lily and I wouldn't upset my daughter. I felt I had to be strong for them, both of them. And that was my reaction to it. She was born, she was a little premature, but she was fine in all respects. And we all thought that everything would be fine with her. And even up until about 8 months, she started making words. She used to say, pretty, pretty.
Say pretty.
She's a very hard worker. She works extremely hard with her therapists and specialists.
there you go. Sit. That was it. Good job. Try it again. Remember, don't look at it. You do better when you're not looking at it. Nice. Good job.
Very brave because she has to overcome many medical and physical infirmities. She's also very loving and sweet. She's a beautiful little girl.
She was particularly in a bad mood, okay, and she needed some time in her room. And wherever Lily goes, her voice goes. So I'm never going to, let's sit on your bed and take some time, a breather, and not give her her device. So I put the device down and I leave the room, and I was kind of like peeking in, and she said on her device, "Go away, speech therapist." And that wasn't a phrase. So she had to actually say, "Go." I don't think she said away. She said go. She went into people and she went to speech therapist, and that was it. And that was pretty jaw-dropping. I was very proud of her.
Well, Lily, when she gets something in her mind, she's very, very determined. She's very, she has a very strong sense of style. And so for a while was obsessed with having bangs, and they're not the most convenient thing because first of all, her hands don't function so well. So she can't like push the hair out of her face. And second of all, she never stops moving. And so trying to cut someone's hair who's always in the movement is really, really scary and really difficult. You don't want scissors at someone's face like that. But anyway, so we debated very often about what her hair would be. And she, every morning it would be, I want bangs, I want bangs. I say, Lily, no, 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 no. And she said, yes, I want bangs. And so I told her that if she still wanted bangs by September, I think it was June, we started having this conversation, that I would let her get bangs. And so I did. And she looked adorable, but they were very inconvenient. So we've grown them out since.
Several years ago, when Christine came down to visit, she brought Lily with her, of course. And the most thrilling part is that Lily gets excited when she's coming down my street. Even if she hasn't seen me in a long time, she's so aware of where I live, and she gets all excited. Well, in this one particular day, we went shopping, Christine, Lily, and I. And Chrissy saw some clothes she wanted to try on. So I took Lily and I put her in the shopping cart and rolled around the store with her. She was fussing and she didn't want to be with me. She wanted to be, with her mama. So very calmly and very gently, I started speaking to her. And I was telling her stories of when her mommy was a little girl, her aunt and her two uncles. And she just sat there like in absolute rapt attention, staring at me, absorbing everything I was telling her. And from that day on, she was very, very close to me, which I find incredibly beautiful. She told the teachers, asked her who did she want to be made up to look like? And she said, Grandma. I said, well, we can't make you look like Grandma. And then finally she got it across to them that she wanted wrinkles like Grandma. So they drew wrinkles on her face. I was never more proud of my wrinkles. I was so happy to have them that I could share them with this little angel.
Every so often we get mail from Lily, just to give you an example. And she will write these beautiful letters to us about how much she loves us and the things that she wants to do with us. And when it's my birthday, she always sends a nice card. And these are things that she writes on her own, using her Toby, using her eyes to convey what she wants to convey. So again, it's all in there. It's just she has no way of getting it out. And in some ways she's fortunate. She's still mobile.
Careful, watch where you're walking.
She's still able to walk. I know a lot of these little girls lose that ability.
So Lily is sweet and amazing. She wakes up around 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and she has a really hard time moving around. So she stays in bed for a good hour. We put the Toby in her bed and we have a little bit of a conversation. I let her watch some videos that she likes, and we'll give her her smoothie and get her, that's her breakfast. Then I help get her out of bed.
Come on. See it. Hey. Good work, kid. You got out of bed second day in a row. By yourself.
and get her changed, and we wash her face and brush her teeth, and she's still pretty wobbly at this point, but she's starting to walk a little bit better. We go downstairs, we read some books, maybe we'll go for a walk outside because it's nice out. It's starting to get cooler, so we can't go swimming in the morning because it's too cold. Lunch is usually around 12 o'clock, and then after lunch we'll go to the pool and we'll hang out at the pool all afternoon until dinner, which is around 5:30. And then after dinner she takes a bath, and if the weather's really nice I might take her outside again for another walk because it's just so pretty out here. We watch movies. Movie time is 7 o'clock, and she likes about, like, I want to say close to a dozen movies. And then medicine for sleep. She has to take medicine to sleep at night, so I give that to her at 7:30, and by 8 o'clock she's asleep.
My relationship with Lily is she brings me such joy. Every time I see her, and we Zoom a lot, especially in this terrible coronavirus time that we're going through. And as soon as she sees me, she smiles and she laughs. And she shows me how much she loves me, how much she misses me. And I feel the same way about her. I miss her so badly when I don't see her every day on Zoom. And that's just a very special relationship that we have.
I've been with Lily since she was about 2 years old. So I met Lily when she came to the communication clinic at Montefiore Rett Syndrome Center. And we hit it off. I was living in Brooklyn at the time, and Mom asked if I would want to be her. I believe she was going into the preschool program where she was getting speech and language services, and I helped her get her first Toby. And then I've stuck with them since then.
Lily in 3 words: silly. She's got a great sense of humor. Smart. The most difficult part of all of it is knowing that it's in there. You look at Lily. She can speak to you with her eyes, and she uses her Toby, so you know it's in there. She can communicate with her Toby.
10 hens in a pen.
When we went on vacation, Christine, Lily, Marina, and I, to Cape Cod, the most fun she would have was at night when Christine would be busy getting ready for bed, and Marina would sit and read her book after book after book. I mean, it got to the point where, oh God, no more of these books. But she so enjoyed being with Marina, and Marina enjoyed being with her.
And then I think when she was around 1.5 years, she started having some regressions. Affects primarily girls. There's some rare cases that I know boys do have it, but I know that's extremely rare. And it's regressive.
But with Rett syndrome, it comes down to the motor skills all of a sudden maybe abruptly stopping, or the branches just aren't growing with the rest of the body. So they're not able to make movements as they used to do. They might have been babbling and all of a sudden stopped. You start seeing a regression of skills, withdrawn because they can't motor plan to be able to get their parents' attention or look when they're called. Not that they don't hear or understand what's being asked of them, but their body isn't responding anymore. So I think that's where there's kind of confusion. But a hallmark sign is generally a lot of the hand wringing. Lily used to kind of strum on her tummy, And I think that was a sign that the doctor noticed and kind of looked into Rett syndrome.
Tends to get worse over time, and the way I've seen it explained and the way I've seen it play out in front of me is kind of the worst of autism, Parkinson's disease. I mean, all of these really difficult conditions all kind of wrapped up into one that affects little girls. It's rare, pretty rare. It's actually more common than I thought it was, considering I'd never heard of it before. But it's rare enough that it doesn't get the attention that it needs in order for people to really devote time and money and effort into finding a cure. Well, I know firsthand that it's just very difficult to get these little girls the help that they need.
I had to hire a lawyer and sue the Department of Education, because every child, and I was telling you this before, I think every child, it's either national, it's federal law or state law, but every child is afforded a free and appropriate education in the United States. And if you can't find a program for your child that is appropriate, which I wasn't able to, I looked all over New York City and I couldn't find anything. I only found 2 private schools that were appropriate for her. And we had to apply, and one we were accepted to and one we weren't. And I have to every year get the Department of Education to pay for her schooling, which is a whole process because I have to sue them every year, and we have to demonstrate that Lily needs the school setting that she's in and the different therapies that she gets. So, you know, it's getting a lot of letters from her therapists and her doctors and her teachers about, you know, what Lily needs in order to learn. And it's a big, painful process every year.
You know, I know she's my sister and I'm probably a little bit biased, but the amount, it's a full-time job for Christine, between all of the paperwork with Medicaid and all the different therapists. I mean, Lily is in therapy, I don't even know how many hours every single week.
Yeah, Lil. Good job. Way to keep looking. Oh, looking at the camera, silly. You gotta look at the balance beam. That's why you can't have work, Lily. Good job. Good job. Last one. Easy peasy. Let me squeeze you. Go pick up circles. A little bit closer. Good job.
I know, it's all done.
And my sister is spearheading all of those efforts. She is in a good position, at least that she has a good job and she makes a nice living, but it also makes you wonder, what about these parents that don't even have that advantage? First of all, my sister is very intelligent, very educated, that she knows how to find these resources, and then she knows how to get them, even though it's an enormous responsibility and a ton of work. But I imagine there's a lot of parents out there that can't do that. They don't have the time. Not that she does. They don't have the know-how. They don't have the resources. You know, and somebody needs to advocate for these little girls. They don't have a voice. And I think there is so much locked in her beautiful brain that she just can't get out. And you can see the frustration, and you can see how hard it is for her, that it's in there and she can't get it out. It's not a lack of intelligence, because she really is a very, very smart girl.
Lily loves reading. She's always been very attuned to books, very interested in books, but not just looking at the pictures. She's always been interested in the words. So Lily's literacy skills are really, really good. This kid loves learning, and she doesn't like to be wrong, which who likes to be wrong? But she especially doesn't like to be wrong. So she sometimes won't answer unless she knows the correct answer.
Lily loves to write stories. She's super creative. The latest story she wrote was about if she were a unicorn, what would she want to look like? She's also written stories about like if she were a superhero, like what would her superpower be? I can't remember what they were, but they're really cute. And she wrote a Fancy Nancy story, a Lily and Fancy Nancy story with Elaine just a couple weeks ago. She likes to write. She's very creative. And she usually has like very silly stories that she likes to write.
It's just the connection's not there for her to be able to get it out, and my heart just breaks knowing how frustrating it needs to, how frustrating it is for her to have to sort of live that way. So part of the challenge with Rett syndrome is that it is, you just never know what to expect. You can have a month where there are no new regressions. It seems like she's even picking up some new skills, getting better at walking. But then the tables can turn, and next thing you know, I know sleep is an on and off issue where she just can't sleep at night, which for my sister as a caregiver presents other challenges because she needs to have her batteries charged in order to take care of Lily and in order to do her job and provide for Lily. I know that she's gone through bouts where she has a lot of seizures. She has a lot of gastrointestinal issues. She has trouble putting on weight. So, I mean, it is just this enemy that attacks you from every possible angle. And just when it seems like things are under control, something else comes in, so it's tough to fight a battle when there are no rules. But she is she's so brave. She's so brave, and I know she has her tough days, and I know she gets really frustrated, and who can blame her? But the majority of the time, she smiles, she's happy, she's very loving. She's a really, really, really easy kid to love, which might be difficult for people to understand when you have a little girl that can't express to you with words that she loves you, and she can't put her arms around you to give you a hug. But somehow she's still able to express all of that. You can just see from her face how much she loves you. I mean, she's a very special little girl. And I don't think she would want to be defined by Rett syndrome. This is part of who she is, but it's not all of who she is. She is so much more than that.
I would say her strengths are her sense of humor, her ability to read other people's emotions. She's very attuned to those around her and wants to know that they're okay. She's very emotionally connected that way, even without being able to speak. So that's really special. And she's amazing at reading. She doesn't like math so much, but we're getting there.
It's a constant struggle, and she can take a step forward, but then she takes 3 steps back.
So we've had a lot of ups and downs in terms of her. Everything's connected to her physical ability to do something. So even though cognitively she's maintaining a lot of the information that we're teaching her, both linguistically and educationally, if she's not physically able to do something, she can't get it out. She can't demonstrate those skills. So physically, I would say maybe 3 years ago, she went through a phase where her body was kind of fighting itself to gain control. She wasn't walking as well. Her tone wasn't as consistent. She was having a hard time attending. Her focus was off, and that affected everything. And she worked really hard to regain those skills. Will she ever surpass the place where she was? I think if we focus long enough, we can, but there's always a risk with this syndrome, and that's the scary part of it, is that you work so hard to maintain and build new skills, but something can happen and you can lose them at any time. So that's the frustrating and scary part of Rett syndrome. I've learned that it's okay to laugh, even when we're having a hard day, that when we might not be feeling well and have had a hard day, that you can still push through and you can get through a session and you can get over it and you can still smile at the end. I think Lily, especially this year, has been able to overcome things that are affecting her physically, medically, and persevere. And I take lessons from that. I mean, it's amazing. I don't know if I'd be that strong. I would say it's being stuck in a body that isn't doing what you want it to do. It's hard to, whenever I meet new people, I always get anxiety because I want them to understand. I don't want them to just take someone at face value where they see someone that's physically limited and attribute their cognitive level to their physical level. So it's like having a child at that age or adult stuck in a body that's not working for them and it's very inconsistent. So it's hard to learn new motor maps and motor plans. If you think of an older adult that has lived their life able-bodied and then all of a sudden maybe had a severe stroke and can't do anything anymore, we usually don't treat that person mentally any different. We still assume they have the same thoughts and feelings. And it's the same thing for an individual with Rett syndrome. They're a person inside, they're capable of learning. So that's always what I want to get across to people is that, they're physically challenged, but they're not mentally challenged. Especially when Lily was younger, Rett syndrome still wasn't very known in the medical community. It wasn't something someone would see like a hallmark sign, which might be hand wringing or like repetitive patterns, motor patterns, and say, hey, let's test for Rett syndrome. A lot of the physical regression also happens around the same time you'd see signs of autism around 3 years old. A lot of withdrawal. You have the same symptoms, but they're for different reasons. And I think that's what the confusing thing is.
These kids are super smart, and just because they can't communicate effectively doesn't mean they don't understand what you're saying. I guess what I'd like to say is that just because people are disabled doesn't mean that they're any less, and that disabled people should be included in every part of the conversation that's happening in this country right now, whether it's about politics or education or healthcare. The disabled are the least represented minority group in this country, and I'd say probably in the world. And it's a real shame because they're some of the most amazing people you'll ever meet.
The most frustrating things about Rett syndrome is theoretically they know how to reverse it. The knowledge is there, but since it's such a rare disease, nobody's really heard of it. It's pretty rare. Companies don't have that motivation to find the cure, or they don't have the money to find the cure. And that's why it's so essential to raise awareness for this disease. I mean, could you imagine having this condition that just eats away at who you are and how you are and everything about you? And theoretically, it can be cured, but the money's not there to cure it. I mean, that is an absolute tragedy to me. And, that's why I post about it on Facebook. I tell people about it. I try to help my sister out when she has fundraisers and try to raise money myself. Because if the money were there, so would the cure. And the little girls that are suffering, who knows when we could end their suffering, but if we could turn it around for them, and even if we can't, then, who knows the next generation. It can never be too soon when you're talking about a cure. So, that's, I think the most important thing that anyone can do is raise awareness, talk about it, donate, share it with your friends and family. These little girls need help.